evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us tonight. You're here with me, Eric, and my colleague, Brian.
Hey.
And this is Brian and Eric Don't Belong Here. Brian, I think we've got a pretty special episode today.
Dude, I'm so excited about this one. I'm so excited to finally get this one out there.
Yeah, I think this will be big. So we had the honor and the pleasure and the delight of being joined by Tess Pfeifle herself, the head of research for Astonishing Legends, one of the greatest occult and paranormal podcasts of all time.
It's entirely insane that she came and hung out with us.
Poor judgment on her part. Lovely young lady. Very bad judgment.
She did not hear last week's episode where we were just two scared little boys in the dark.
Yeah.
It's for the best that came out a little later, because had she heard it, she probably would have been like, no, never mind.
Yeah.
You are goofuses.
I'm calling your parents. Get away from the mic. But yeah, she was lovely. So huge shout out to Tess. Thank you again so much for coming on. Huge shout out to Astonishing Legends, a big inspiration for the show in a lot of ways in the first place. So yeah, so this episode, if you're just joining us, if you're just joining Brian and Eric for the first time, we do dive into the Sallie House series on Astonishing Legends, and we hear about some behind-the-scenes aspects of that case and that recording, which are pretty wild.
For sure. I was not as familiar with it as you were, and it's one of those stories that just shakes you to your core, man.
Yeah, very spooky. We dabble, we get spooked easily. There's stuff that Tess talks about that is legitimately kind of unexplainable and pretty scary.
Dude, I'm so excited for everybody to hear it.
We get scared when the lights go out.
Not even a little scared, genuinely
very scared.
Very scared. Oh, should we get into this?
Yeah, man. Let's strap in and enjoy the episode. Thanks, guys. And we are here with Tess Pfeifle, the head of research for the ARC, that's the Astonishing Legends Research Corps, and the chief researcher for the Astonishing Legends podcast. I'm here with Brian. Tess, welcome to Brian and Eric Don't Belong Here.
And also,
Thank
we're
you
sorry.
for having me.
We are very sorry, just in advance. So this is neat. I mean, we sort of talked about this off air, but we were very impressed to hear that you went through most of our back catalog. So you're probably aware that we mentioned Astonishing Legends, or I mentioned Astonishing Legends at least twice every episode. Kind of obsessed. So it's
Me
pretty
too.
pretty crazy to have you on board. I guess our first question is, how did you even get involved with that podcast?
So I'll tell an abridged version because
Sure.
it's all my stories ridiculous and long-winded, and I never learned the Shakespeare quote, brevity is the soul of wit. But anyway, I was going to be a senior in college, and I didn't have an internship lined up, and everyone else did, and I figured, well, I got to work somewhere for free to prove myself. And I sent an email out to Astonishing Legends, which I had listened to the whole summer.
Where in kind of the show were they when you reached out to them?
So
how long have they been around, if you remember?
It was right before they did Oak Island, or maybe Oak Island episode 1.
Yep.
Actually, if we don't, for full context, can we get a quick gist of Astonishing Legends, maybe from Eric, the largest evangelist of the show?
Well, he was in the research corps, and he helped quite a bit with our Coral Castle episode. He did good research on Ed Skin.
This is true, and I found out about how sharks have a compass in their nose.
Correct.
Yep.
What the hell are you all talking about?
Brian, don't worry about it, man. This is big kid ghost hunter stuff, so we'll circle back later.
I'll just go back to the little kids' table.
Yeah, so I don't know if I mentioned this. I'm sure I must have mentioned this on the air because I talk about it every day. It's my crowning achievement. Yeah, I was briefly in the Astonishing Research Corps before I started grad school and just kind of my life spun out of control. But yeah, it's amazing. So Tess and I actually kind of, I guess you could say we know each other indirectly.
Yeah.
We didn't get to chat too much while I was in there, but I just remember you doing a pretty amazing job running that whole show, which is actually, we don't have to go too deep into the logistics of like an outsourced research core and how that works, but what Astonishing Legends does and what you do behind the scenes is crazy. I mean, they basically have a team of dedicated researchers who are volunteers and just in a sort of internal Slack channel type of thing, like researching episodes and getting facts together. And
the rules.
Yeah, Brian and I print out a Wikipedia article like 5 minutes before the show and then just drink a lot of Diet Coke.
Same thing. Same thing.
Yeah, same thing.
But yeah, okay, so Astonishing Legends is basically Tess. I mean, stop me at any point here. But it's basically just hyper well produced, super well researched and fascinating exploration of the paranormal and the occult and the unexplained and kind of conspiracy theories. It's almost like it's sort of like a mix of Unsolved Mysteries and what is the NPR car show like Click and Clank?
Car Talk.
Click and clack.
Car Talk, yes,
Yeah.
Car Talk with Scott and Forrest. I don't know, Tess, do you think that's a fair characterization?
Yes, because I think when you say paranormal, which is a lot of people categorize this as, it's almost kind of limiting because we've done plenty of non-paranormal stuff.
True. Amelia
So some
Earhart.
people like that. Yeah, Amelia Earhart we've done. Although there are some paranormal theories if you want to get into it.
Of course, always.
But we've done, those Wild West episodes, and it's Astonishing Legends kind of gives us free reign to do whatever we want. Although I didn't have any claim in that name. It took them like a year to come up with. So.
Okay, great. So, I mean, that's awesome. So you're in college, you're desperate for an internship.
Yes.
And you've been listening to a podcast all summer.
Yeah, I worked at Annie's Bananas, and it was like a 30-minute bike ride.
Sorry, what the fuck is Annie's Bananas?
Annie's
Were you
Bananas
just
is in
selling
Rehoboth,
bananas?
Delaware.
Okay.
And it was a frozen banana through a juicer, and it comes out like a like soft serve, kind of like a vanilla soft serve, and then we did toppings.
Frozen banana ice cream is crazy.
Yeah.
Do it at home. This is an Astonishing Legend all of its own.
I'm no longer interested in ghosts. Put it away. This is
You
now
just
an
want
Annie's
bananas.
Bananas.
Frozen banana pod. Tess, this interview is over. Thank you.
I've totally discredited myself. But yeah, it was a really fun juxtaposition because I'd be like, riding my little bike to go and work here. And it was a very upbeat place. And the first episode of Astonishing Legends, or the second episode, is about a cemetery. So that was a fun kind of parallel. But anyway, I decided to send them an email, and I was like, look, here are all the reasons you should hire me as an intern. I know you aren't looking for interns. I know you've never mentioned anyone helping you, but I would like to help you. Here's my resume, and I can get you recommendations if you need me to. And so I didn't hear anything for like a month and a half. And I was like, okay, cool. I guess I'm not going to have an internship.
Sure.
And then they emailed me, and I studied at Oxford. I'd studied Shakespeare adaptation and the treatment of Shakespeare in kind of our contemporary world. And at the end of Oak Island in episode 4, there's the authorship question, which, by the way, Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare, no matter what people say about Francis Bacon. But they asked me if I would do a write-up on that. They liked it. They read it on air. They said, we'll be in touch. I didn't hear from them for another 2 weeks, noticing a pattern.
Actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And after that, I got a legal document about being an intern, and I got rolled into everything, and that was it. It was just it was me, Scott, and Forrest. We didn't have Sarah, our fantastic editor, yet, but we did have Ryan McCullough, who does our sound design. And there was no arc. It was just me, and I was mostly we just texted and called each other, and my first full episode was Dyatlov Pass.
Great episode.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, it's really cool. So let's back up just a little bit. So you were an Astonishing Legends listener and fan. Had you always kind of been interested in that sort of subject matter?
Oh yeah, since I was a little kid, pretty much.
So funny. I mean, one of the things Brian and I kind of explore a lot on the podcast is like what motivates interest in the paranormal and the occult and the kind of and the strange. Where do you shake out on all that?
Do you
So if
believe
I was,
it? Are you afraid of it?
Yeah.
Ugh, that's a tough question. Okay, I can say where I come to it.
Well, this is a pretty hard-hitting interview podcast, Tess, so hold on to your socks. We don't pull any punches.
When I was 7, I would say I want to go to Fairyland. That's it,
Sure.
full stop. But now as a 24-year-old with like an understanding of my younger self and, going through college and all that, I'd say I've always had a passion for storytelling. I work in publishing full-time now. Astonishing Legends tells great stories. And I think out of every kind of genre there is, the paranormal and specifically horror stories, to me, cover the biggest breadth of human emotion, and that's what you need for a great story. So that's my like smart person answer, but my little kid answer would be, I want to go through the fairies, I want to be a witch, I want to ride on a broom, I want to be Kiki's Delivery Service, which is a great movie.
It is a good movie.
So that's kind of, I've always been interested, fairies and witches for my entry into it, and then kind of like in your chaos magic episode, I definitely got weird with it in high school. And then in college, I came back to it in kind of a more storytelling, research-based way.
When you say you got weird with it in high school, let's unpack that.
I want to know absolutely everything. Did you summon a little demon?
I definitely tried. No,
shit.
I didn't try to summon a demon. I did try to like curse my teacher, and I like did. My mom has owned a flower shop for my whole life, pretty much. So she has like a lot of white pillar candles. So if my mom listens to this, I'm screwed. I stole a bunch of her like white pillar candles and like carved spells into them and like buried them in our backyard.
That's
what you're supposed to do. Nothing happened, spoiler alert, but I was
hurt
like,
the business bottom line slightly. Candle budget took a hit.
Yeah, because that's how you burn your candle, and like I was like, I want to be a millionaire if I do this.
Sure, very interesting. Were you working within like a specific tradition, or were you just buying kind of like off the rack magical paperbacks?
I was definitely doing kind of. If you've read Witches of America, it's a kind of a good overview of all the different kinds of practices in America. I was definitely just like Google crazy, and just wanted to try a little bit of everything. I grew up Catholic. My parents aren't super strict, obviously, if I do this for a living. But I did go to Catholic school, and I had a lot of run-ins, and I was interested in mysticism, and there weren't a lot of outlets to explore it. So I think I kind of went a little hog wild.
Do you think there's an element? Do you think there's an element of, I also went to Catholic school. Do you think there's an element of rebellion to it that kind of motivates it? Of, I'm not supposed to be looking at this, or I'm not supposed to be into this.
Totally. That and the fact, I mean, yeah, like I definitely like Hail Satan, Magustalationed my like teachers. I still, if someone comes on me, like I live in DC, so if someone comes up to me at the metro trying to like evangelize, I'll be like, have you heard the good word of Satan? And they don't really like that. So definitely that. And I think if, when you grow up Catholic, you go to this big church with like stained glass windows and everything, like you kind of know about wizards and everyone's in robes, and it's kind of this confusing place where like magic exists, but it doesn't, and it's bad. So I think Catholic kids, you kind of screw yourself over by having the Catholic Church so steeped in, looking like wizards. So
Right.
I think interested me in it.
I've talked about it before, but I always felt like, oh man, there's all this cool magic-y mythology and stuff, but always this feeling of, don't get weird with it, kid. But that's the cool stuff.
It is. We actually talked
Everybody
about
looks like
that.
goddamn Dumbledore.
We talked about that in the Warrens episode a little bit.
Yeah.
How there's like an extremely metal side to the Catholic and Christian cosmology, but you have to stay in the very like well lit kind of end of the corridor. But there is a whole other end of the corridor that's very spooky and kind of
Fucking
interesting.
cool, man.
Okay, so we go from little girl who is interested in fairies and witches to practicing witch, slinging curses and stealing family candles to a literary scholar and kind of someone who's more interested in just storytelling as a general art form. Where do you sort of shake out? I mean, the other thing that we try to explore in this podcast is kind of the line of what is real and what is not real. And we'll talk about the Sallie house and that whole experience a little bit later. But generally speaking, both now and when you kind of joined Astonishing Legends, where did you find yourself in terms of relating to the reality of some of this stuff?
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear us?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry.
That's okay. I think we might have a little network deal. Did you catch the tail end? I was basically just asking where. So you used to be somewhat of a practitioner, then you kind of moved on to.
Okay, can you hear me? Sorry, it went out, but I think I'm back in now.
I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. I think that's on our end. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sorry.
Yeah. Our powerful corporate Wi-Fi is failing us. So where do you shake out in terms of some of the reality of this stuff? Sallie house aside or not, both when you joined the Astonishing Legends and today?
I mean, this is kind of a cop-out answer, but it's the truth.
Sure.
I go into kind of every aspect of, the paranormal and the supernatural and the unexplained with an open mind, in the sense, an open mind but not an empty mind.
Yeah.
I think would be a good way to say it, because I think when you narrow down to believer or skeptic, well, if you're a believer, does that mean you believe in Yetis and aliens and ghosts?
Right.
Because those are three very different things. And we said it on the podcast that the Bigfoot people sometimes hate the alien people, the alien people are those guys believe in Bigfoot. What the hell? But
oh, I want to see those guys fight so bad.
they really will. Don't wish it. Don't go on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's
They'll
the
be
first
after
thing I'm going to
you.
do when we do this.
It truly is different nerd fandoms looking down their nose at one another in a way.
And even within the Astonishing Legends, Facebook group and our fans and getting feedback, you hear all different kinds of things for the same episode. So I guess I approach it with there's layers and complexity and gray space to all parts of life, including kind of belief. And that belief can shift and change and evolve based on stories, because you're not born hearing every story. So how can you ever make a conclusive kind of choice? Of course, again, I don't have an empty mind. I do pretty thorough research on things. But I think that it's important to, confirmation bias works both ways. And so if you go in thinking something's bullshit, you're probably going to leave thinking it's bullshit.
Yeah.
So
that's really interesting. I mean, I'll let Brian chime in on this also, but I feel like we've both kind of had sort of the idea of this podcast was basically to be open-minded skeptics running what's essentially a comedy podcast, exploring the occult with an open mind and a sort of suspension of disbelief, because that's a little more fun. But since starting this show, we've both had some kind of weird experiences that are in a little too deep, I feel like sometimes, that have definitely challenged the whole, well, this is a fun game of pretend that is completely harmless and whatever.
I don't have a lot to add, but yeah, man, it's funny how that works.
Yeah.
Well, it's you kind of open yourself up to it. I mean, the idea of, for example, black-eyed kids, there's this whole idea that if you talk about them, if you know about them, if you believe in them, or even are scared by a story about them, you're more likely to see one. If
Tess, you were presenting me with some new information. I was not aware of this.
You didn't listen to our Black-Eyed Kids episode? We had Brian Bethel on.
I'll have to go back.
I think we need to delete our own Black-Eyed Kids episode. Also because it's bad.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, but you know what? It's like you look into the abyss and the abyss stares back.
Yeah.
That is a great, terrifying way to put it.
Yeah. Tess, do you have any particular areas for example, am positive that cryptids are bullshit, but just kidding. But do you have any areas of the cult that you're like extra skeptical about or extra interested in?
So skeptical would definitely be like conspiracy theories. I think unfortunately like a lot of them they seem kind of fun to like dig into at first, but the deeper you go into them, you realize like, oh, like this is pretty racist. Or
oh, sure.
It's true. It's terribly true.
Yeah, so I don't like conspiracy theories, and I don't know how they got lumped into like the pureness that is the paranormal, but here we are. I don't know. Do I think one thing is? I don't think so, because I've heard, I've done over 100 episodes of Astonishing Legends now, and we've covered basically every genre. Yeah, ironically, Sallie House was my 100th episode, the first Sallie House.
Oh, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't plan that either.
No.
So, yeah, I don't think there's one thing besides conspiracy theories that I can kind of shut the lid on.
Yeah.
Because even cryptids, to me, there's kind of a truth in them in the sense that, like, we didn't think giant squids were real.
Right.
And it's like, did giant squids, take down ships? Probably not. Like, that's probably didn't happen. But
yeah.
The version of them exists. So that's why maybe cryptids would be, like, a second place to me. But because, like, people thought kangaroos were cryptids. A bunch of people went to Australia, and everyone's like, that's bullshit.
Yes, kangaroos are cryptids. That's ridiculous.
So, yeah. So, and if you look at, like, any, like, medieval, like, pictograms or like their illustrated books, all the animals look weird, like they just didn't know how to draw cats.
Right. Hard to draw,
yeah,
to be fair.
That's a wild point.
Yeah, that is a wild point. Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing that I think, like, that's the only, I guess, the thing about cryptids that sort of turns me off is, like, they're discovering new fantastical species, like, especially, like, deep in the oceans. They're discovering new species all the time. And because it's not secret or for whatever reason, those are not considered as sort of fantastical as like a very large gorilla that lives in North America, I guess. So that's, I mean, not to poo-poo it, but yeah, totally. And I love conspiracy theories, so like it's funny how it goes every way.
Yeah.
Are there any areas that particularly kind of draw you in?
Definitely witches. I find like the witch lore, just from like especially a female perspective, really interesting. Sure. I also love ghosts. Probably the two of them, and ghosts can cover such a big range because that's like, poltergeists and, possession to a point. Some people believe you can be possessed by a ghost, and orbs and all these things. So I think ghosts and witches kind of have the richest folklore behind them. And why is that? And I find that so interesting.
Is there anything that you have either were extremely interested in, maybe had an inkling of belief towards, or the other way around, kind of thought was bullshit, that your experience with the show has maybe changed your mind on?
Oh, totally. I thought aliens were the biggest load of bullshit ever.
Really?
I was like, oh, you got abducted? Well, where's your proof? Sorry, if you did get abducted, like, that sucks. Yeah. But before I started the show, I was never interested in aliens. I was not a science person. I like virology, and that's about it. So I think that's part of it. And so I just didn't read a lot about it. And then, like, I remember when we did our first alien show together, I was like, uh-oh, here we go. And now, I mean, they're definitely not my favorite, but like the Delphos ring to me was like super compelling for some reason, even though, it wasn't even like a third or fourth kind encounter. I find that really compelling. I almost said what we're doing in January, so I'm really glad I didn't say that out loud. So I won't. Okay.
Okay.
I'm trying to think
good.
of another
No
alien
one
thing.
listens to this show.
Please edit this out.
Yeah.
The Delphos ringing, the Kecksburg incident, and the Welsh flap that we just covered.
Yeah,
I found those all super interesting. And if you had asked me when I started the show, I would have been like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, that's boring.
It's fun. We had a sort of similar experience, I think, covering chaos magic very cursorily, where it seems so ridiculous at the outset, and you kind of delve deeper into some of these topics and concepts, and you kind of find yourself being like, well, that sort of, I guess, actually does make sense in a strange way, or that is a little bit more plausible. Very, very interesting stuff. Yeah, I think you and I were kind of caught up in an interesting Twitter exchange with the Our Strange Skies guys.
Yeah.
Talking about how many UFOs often they seem to manifest as almost like internal psychological signs, or to throw back to chaos magic, kind of like sigils in the sky, which is so bizarre.
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting. And I think, I mean, last podcast on the left covered another one that I'd never heard of, and like the Andreessen affair. I found that so compelling.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just very strange. And I do, or Travis Walton, like Fire in the Sky, like, man, if that guy's lying, I mean, he's wasting his time. I mean, he could have been like an Emmy Award winner,
Yep.
That's actually a great point, bringing us to in the research core. Do you have a litmus test for determining kind of what's good information and what's probably some bogus stuff?
Yes,
or is
but
it
I don't tell anyone about it.
What's that?
I said yes, but I don't tell anyone.
That's
I
fair.
litmus test them without knowing. So if anyone's listening from the ARC, sorry. One thing I try to do is we have kind of every topic's different, so every topic has different kind of what they're called in River, which is the program we use. There's like a topic, and then you have forms within your topic that you can kind of like have specific chats in. And so I always include a section for like what I call fun sources. So those are like, your Black background, green text blogs, your Daily Mails, your, Tumblr blog from 2008. So I kind of like, because I do think you can kind of find gems, and whether they're used kind of seriously or not, we do try to present every theory, not every theory, but like we've tried to present usually a range of theories from skeptic to believer, and usually at least one or two somewhere in between. So there is like a place for those kinds of sources in the ARC, but they're in a specific kind of like cordoned off section. And then I have sections about different kinds of information sources. So like newspaper articles, like clippings and stuff, especially for doing an older piece, current like reporting on it, and how does that current reporting different from previous reporting, and like the 40-year gap, does that matter, does it not, and like how are we reporting on aliens, the Kelly Hopkinsville aliens now versus how were they originally reported. Like the whole little green men thing is totally fabricated and not in any of the original reports.
Right.
Interesting.
So I think parsing it out is kind of how I do kind of like a forced kind of test, because as long as you can acknowledge like, yes, this NPR interview is a compelling article, like a compelling source that is probably well researched and reliable to a point, whereas like this random blog from like 1998, who knows?
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
That's fascinating. So I mean, I guess the sort of the thing that made us reach out to you, aside from just being huge fans, was just the kind of phenomenon of the Sallie House experience.
So the Sallie House is an episode of Astonishing Legends. It's a 4-parter now, I believe.
It is 4 parts, yeah.
Wow. I'm just saying, if you tally it all up, I have done audiobooks this year that were significantly shorter.
I think it was like 16 hours.
It's pretty epic. Would you be able to give us, obviously you should go right now and listen to the show yourself. It's great. But can you give us a very trunicated sort of summary of what the Sallie House is, and maybe what makes that episode so epic in size? What made it worthy of 4 parts?
Sure. So, okay, this is a big question. The Sallie house is a house in Atchison, Kansas. It was built in the 1800s. We used to sit on what was Second Street, or what is now Second Street, but was an avenue. It faces the water. Was not considered haunted or strange, although it was the home to kind of an eccentric family. And there's this whole rumor that kind of sprung up, this apocryphal, or what I believe to be apocryphal story of a young girl named Sallie, who went to this doctor's house, who lived there, and there were doctors that lived there. That's all confirmed. It was the Finney family, and he did not give her enough anesthesia, or however they knocked people out back then. And she died basically of fright. Is the story? Yeah, she died, screaming in pain.
But you think this is not true?
No, I think it's apocryphal, but I think sometimes apocryphal stories can be very meaningful because we tell stories about places and things in nature that confuse and scare us. That's why there's lots of mythology around thunderstorms and volcanoes, even though it doesn't say, hey, we're afraid of volcanoes. That's what the story's really saying.
Right.
Yeah. So I think in a way, like, sometimes people, especially like other paranormal researchers, will look at a house like the Sallie house with what is probably an apocryphal story. There's no Sallie that we've been able to find that lived in town that matches the age and the time frame. But I think a lot of people then throw it out and say, well, this is a made-up story. But why was that story made up? Because it's not like that house was running. Where did that story come from, and why, and how, and why do we tell ourselves this?
That is interesting. And I mean, there are, and we'll try to link to this in the show notes, but you guys have dug up a ton of pretty fascinating and compelling phenomena that's occurred. And so stuff has been going on in this house for some time.
A year before I was born, I think, is when it started, or 2 years before I was born, because Taylor is a year older than me. And the Pickman, so the Sallie story is the apocryphal story. And then fast forward to 1992. Oh, I should know the exact date. Whatever, early 1990s.
Listen to the real show for the the actual date.
I tried to scrub most of it off my my memory, my brain. But fast forward to the early 1990s. Deborah and Tony Pickman move in. Deborah was pregnant. They were a young couple. They wanted to move closer to home, and they wanted an actual house. And where they were living was too small to raise what would be their first son, Taylor. So when they moved in, everything was kind of hunky-dory for a while, and then these strange things started happening. And at first, it's the kind of things you can kind of forget about or blame on an old house. And then the things started getting more and more intense. Fires started happening. Tony was getting scratched, and actually...
Didn't Tony get lit on fire as well?
He got near lit on fire. And there was like a couple of dangerous kind of what would have been threatening fires. Tony saw Tony saw multiple full-bodied apparitions, or kind of, hell beasts. The picture on our 4th episode is an artist rendition of something Tony saw in the house. So be warned before you look at it, because it's pretty gross.
It looks like almost like a flayed zombie or just terrifying monster without skin kind of crawling towards
you. It's just gross. It's just gross.
Yeah, whoever the artist is that actually made that full life-size sculpture of it is an interesting person.
Yeah, I don't know why you do that, but hey, everyone's their hobbies.
Their own. Sure.
And just, I mean, the depth and the intensity of what they experienced is hard to go into in just a few minutes. But so just basically, there were full body apparitions. There was a feeling of malice and depression and just an overwhelming feeling, especially for Tony, of just being unsettled. But it's not like was like this every day, because everyone says, well, why didn't they just move out? Well, one, money.
Right. It's very difficult to.
Yeah.
And especially when you're a couple with like a new baby, but also the activity wasn't every single day they'd wake up and like a pan would go flying through the air and like all the stuffed animals would like light on fire. Like that didn't happen every day, but it happened enough to become patterns, and then enough to become almost expected but still scary. And so Deborah and Tony kind of lived through this. Tony gets scratched on camera, which I find to be one of the most compelling pieces of the paranormal I've ever seen, especially after talking to Scott and Forrest, who both come from editing backgrounds, them watching it and being like, there's no cut, there's no edit.
That video is wild. I mean, it's basically what's the phenomenon where you start to bleed in basically the marks of the
stigmata.
It's almost like a stigmata type of effect, but just on his arm. Yeah.
And eventually there are a couple like intense events that you can listen to the episode to learn more about. And the family decides to leave. And then after that, there are a few more tenants, but none of them stay really more than like 6 months or a year. And there's also like a purported like witch who moved in specifically because of the activity surrounding them, because the family was on sightings. Although in the sightings episode, they do all have fake names. Just a heads up.
Right, they mentioned that in the show.
And that witch is the origin of that sort of strange summoning circle that's in the basement, right?
Yeah. Although, I mean, I'm sure you'll want me to tell my part, but I don't think the basement's that scary.
Interesting.
I wasn't scared. And so it's kind of been empty for about 12. Oh, no, I'm 24. About 14, maybe 15 years. Now it's owned. There's kind of a partnership with the town. There's still like, the homeowner who was also on the show, Les, who's like a real character. He's like one of those people, in the interview, you can kind of hear him warm up, because at first he's like, I don't want to do this. You can tell, like, it's all BS. I don't want anyone to break in. Stop breaking in. And then it kind of gets to more and more real stories.
I actually found his testimony also very compelling, because he clearly didn't mess with that stuff, was not interested in it, but had a sort of matter-of-fact way of talking about it where he didn't really want any extra attention, but it seemed like these were really strange things that he'd gone through.
That's the best. That's that reluctant, like, shit, it's weird, man.
Yeah, well, he said he'd burn the house down if it was ever discovered to be anything. But now it's rented out. You can go visit it. You can sleep over. There's a local college that does like a paranormal class there. So it's really out there, which again, some people take that kind of tourism aspect and say, excuse me, it's BS.
It sounds like we had to take a road trip, Eric.
I don't know, man. I have zero desire. Would you, Tess, would you spend the night there, having experienced what you experienced there?
Never.
Yeah.
Because I think whatever's in there, I don't know how much. I don't know. It does not seem human. It does not seem like it cares. And I mean, like when I went to the house, long story short, we got the chance to go to the house when we were all in Atchison together. And it was kind of last minute, and it was the middle of the day, so it wasn't like a ghost hunting show. We didn't have to go at night. It happened at like 1 p.m.
Yeah.
And we walked in the house, and I was not expecting anything, because not that I thought it was bullshit, but most, if you look at a lot of these stories, especially, I thought this was a poltergeist haunting, just based on like, research, and like if you listen to Black Monk of Pontefract, like that's kind of like, to me, this was similar. And so most poltergeist hauntings last 2 to 3 years max, and then they're gone and there's never any activity again. I don't know why that is, but it just seems to kind of be the practice. And so
that's the pattern.
Yeah. and maybe there's some like residual stuff, but I just wasn't expecting anything. I was just like, yeah, I believe that a lot of this stuff happened, especially the scratch, because it's so hard to like. I just don't know how you'd fake that, especially in the 90s.
Right.
But there's nothing there now, and if it is, it's dormant energy that's just kind of like left over. And you know, you walk in and it's just like the most 1990s house of all time. Like it's not scary.
Yeah.
It's totally not scary. Like it has green carpeting and red carpeting and like no offense to the Pickmans, I don't think they decorated it, but like horrible like weird wallpaper and like linoleum floor kitchen.
Yeah.
It's just like it looks like a time machine almost.
Now I want to go just for nostalgia purposes. I miss those
Just
90s houses.
Eat cereal and watch TV. Yeah.
Exactly. And I didn't like. I walked into the house. I didn't feel anything. You know, one of the first things we did that was like kind of spooky was we went to go down into the basement, and our tour guide Maria was like, "I know this is gonna sound fake, but like the light is broken, and this has never happened. Like, would you feel comfortable going down to the basement without the lights on?" And I was like, "Sure, whatever." And so we like,
So
we, like,
just for context, this is you're there with Scott and Forrest, the co-hosts of Astonishing Legends. Got it.
Oh yeah, sorry.
And you're there for the episode that.
No, we went there on kind of like a fun whim, and we were like, maybe we'll be able to make this like a 1-part episode, just like the history of it. Like we weren't going there. We ended up recording stuff, but like Scott even said, like we didn't even bring the EVP.
That's right.
Like that was a total, like his son was in the car and he wanted to go back to the hotel. And so Scott, when he was dropping him off, just like grabbed the EVP because he's like, well, we're going to be there for like another 20 minutes. So why not, you know? But anyway, it was me, Scott, a friend of the show named Megan, and then Scott's dad and his stepmom. And then Maria, the tour guide. So there were like a fair amount of people in the house. And like I said, you know, it was totally normal. We went down to the basement. It was dark. We did like a spirit box thing. I felt totally normal. It just felt like a basement. Like I'm scared of the dark. So I was like, kind of like, I'd rather not be down here, but I didn't. It was like being in any dark basement. Like, you know,
no abnormally oppressive vibe or anything like that.
No, totally. And not in the entire house for me. Which ends up, I think, being the scariest part, even especially now being home.
Right.
But anyway, so we're there. We're kind of just like, we do the spirit box. Some like kind of weird things come up. But again, I've just kind of shrugged it off and tried not to think about.
What sort of weird things came up?
Like father came up, like, and Scott's a dad, and his dad was there. And then, like, oh God, I'm trying to remember. Just like some words like that. Words that we hadn't been talking about, but maybe that like were floating through our heads, which was kind of weird, but nothing like they didn't say Tess, which would have like, you know, my name, which is like not a popular name.
Sure.
Which would
just
have
to be
been,
clear,
like,
what is a spirit box?
This wasn't a real spirit box. It was a spirit box app on an iPhone.
Gotcha.
Yeah, this wasn't done by Forrest or myself or anyone on the team. It was just done by Maria. It's something she does on a lot of her tours. She just turned it on her phone. It's just an app. That's
and what is it? What is it supposed to do?
Pick up. So it's kind of supposed to work like an EVP and translate the energy, I guess, that's like being said by spirits.
Sort of pick up sound waves in the room or provide a medium for if there is a spirit to communicate via
exactly.
audio. Is that okay? Gotcha.
And there's actual spirit boxes that aren't apps as well, obviously.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I just called it. It's a spirit box app on her iPhone.
All good.
And so we kind of like hang out. We go in all the rooms. She like tells us the stories. Like, okay, this is what happened in this room. Here's like, you know, a weird picture we got in this room. And so you're just kind of like, uh-huh. And it's interesting, but it's interesting in like kind of a removed way, despite being in the house, because the house was like a July summer day, you know.
Right.
And then it started to get a little weird. We went into the room, which is like the nursery that had the most activity in it when the Pickmans were there, and kind of continues to today to have the most activity.
Are those? Is that the room in the photos with where you see the toys sort of arrayed in a circle?
And I was like having a ball with them. I was like, I'm bored. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
And Megan and Scott both complained kind of independently of each other of their chests feeling heavy, but like Forrest and I felt totally fine. Like I was playing with what?
I was just gonna say what was crazy is the woman in the episode who's like, my chest felt heavy, but I also have like a vaguely life-threatening heart condition. So I was like, get out of the haunted house, lady! Come on!
Yeah, Megan was like, after Scott said something, Megan spoke up about it and she was like, oh, I thought it was just like from climbing the stairs. Like, Jesus. I wasn't sure and I didn't want to say anything because it's really easy. She's like, it's really easy for me to dismiss something like this because I have a heart condition.
Yes.
And so when Scott was grabbing the EVP, which I don't know where I was like in my own world. I didn't know he left the house.
Yeah.
But everything in Atchison is like 5 minutes away. Sure. And so when he came back,
did you feel, let me just stop you there quickly.
Sure.
Did you feel at all sort of, hypnotized feels like too strong a word, but sort of engrossed by the house itself? You just mentioned that, like, you just didn't even realize that he was gone. Would you say it was a sort of, you were particularly...
I never thought of it like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that just struck me.
No, I've never thought of... there was always, to me, when I think back about it, a distinct before and after feeling. But that's kind of weird, because, like, my sense of time was super off.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like not a huge house. You're all sort of there together, and it's just an interesting impression to kind of be like. And then I didn't even realize one of us was just kind of gone.
Yeah, and Scott told us too, I think.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that, but because I didn't know we were returning to the room, there was a Raggedy Ann doll in the room, and I was like, I'm gonna freak out the next
spooky one. That's the spooky one.
It's Annabelle.
Oh no!
No, it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
But there was a Raggedy Ann doll and a rocking horse, and I was like, I'm going to put the Raggedy Ann doll on the rocking horse. Yeah. And so we went back to the room to, like, record the EVP. Scott opened the door, and he's like, who did that? And I was like, it was me. I didn't know we were coming back in here.
Yeah.
And so then then I take her off the rocking horse and kind of sit on the floor. So there's, like, a small little twin bed that Scott and Megan are sitting on, and then I'm sitting on the floor on my knees with kind of like the Raggedy Ann doll in my lap, like kind of just holding her. And then Forrest is next to me with the camera. And I don't like telling this part. Right before we start the EVP, I kind of got that heavy chest feeling that Scott and Megan had complained about, but in my head I was just like, nope, like, you're just feeling that because they said they felt it. It's totally made up. I'm feeling it right now. Sure. It's totally made up. You're fine. Yeah. And then Scott hit record and kind of did, I'm sure both of you have heard EVPs before. You do kind of like an intro. You say like, hey, this is who we are. This is why we're here. Like, we're going to ask you some questions, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
As he was doing that, like, I started to feel like sick.
Yikes.
Yeah, like out of nowhere. And like, just to be clear, like I'm shaking a little bit right now and I was totally fine like 20 minutes ago.
Sure.
He asked the first question, and I heard something. I say something now. At first I thought it was someone clear as a bell say, why? And I ask, and it's actually on video. We haven't like shown the video or anything, but
right.
I said, did anyone else hear that? And everyone else says no.
In the show, you sort of describe it almost as a sense of almost something communicating directly with you.
Yeah, because preceding that why was I went to Catholic school, like I said. And when you're a little girl in Catholic school with your little like Peter Pan collar, I went to an all-girls school.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. I went to an all-girls school until I was in high school, and so there was lots of hair tugging and whispering and gossiping, and it kind of felt like someone just lightly lifted up my hair behind my ear, like they were going to tell me a secret.
So you physically felt the hair behind your ear move?
Yeah, and to me, people ask me, like, you know, and Scott asked me on the show, like, what do you think that was? Because there wasn't a breeze, or I know people are like, you know, oh, it was a vent, it was this, it was that. The room was still, which is why I noticed it in the first place. Because if you're like in somewhere where your hair is moving a lot, you're gonna like be like, okay, my hair is moving a lot, like, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, I felt it, and then I heard the why right after.
And did you during that sequence of events, was there kind of an emotional texture to that? Did that why feel malicious or malevolent or scary, or it just felt like literally someone in your head being like asking the question why?
Yeah, it just felt curious. It kind of like had like a little like lilt, like why, you know. It wasn't like a flat why, you know, or like spooky. It didn't feel threatening, but I kind of felt like I had already felt kind of like a little nauseous and a little like you know, my chest was a little heavy.
Short of breath, yeah.
Yeah, and then I kind of just felt like ice cold.
Gotcha.
I don't know, you know, it sounded so real and it felt so real. Then to hear the confirmation that no one else heard it, it just totally plunged me into this like, what the hell just happened? But I can't ask anything because we're in the middle of an EVP session. Right. And stupid Raggedy Ann doll on my lap, and I can't move.
God.
Is there an element in that moment that's just like, fuck it, we gotta go?
I think I was just, you know, my friends joke about this too. You know, like how people have like flight or fight.
I don't know anything about that. Yes. Interesting. Deer in headlights.
Or like fall on the ground. Yeah.
You know, that's actually in that reaction. That's the third one that people don't often talk about, but it's part of it. It's fight, flight, or freeze.
Oh, the three Fs.
Yep.
I will say Eric and I had a weird experience. The episode is not out yet and probably won't be by the time this has come out. We had a weird experience recording one of these shows, and I talk a big game about like, let's go to the Sallie house. We got to do it. It's going to be weird, man. Yeah. And then boom, immediately I interpret anything as threatening. I become a little mousy boy.
Yeah, we got scared.
Just entirely panicky. So I think there would have been a Brian-shaped cloud where I was standing.
There almost was.
Yeah.
Something a little weird just happened, and this happened when I was in my interview with Scott, but half my Christmas lights just fell off in my hallway.
Like right now?
Yep.
Huh. All right.
That's cute.
Well,
okay, cute.
Everybody stay on the line. Yeah, we're all here. Everything's cool.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I think that I just didn't. Well, also I was like, I don't want to like ruin the integrity of this.
Sure.
EVP, and you know, people ask that all the time, like, if you're scared, why don't you do this or that? And in the moment, you're not going to know. It's like before I went to the Sallie house, something similar happened. I live in a studio apartment alone, and it's a very strange studio apartment because it's like super cut up. Like I have a dining room, but no bedroom. And I have a 25-foot hallway that leads into my apartment.
Weird. Okay.
Yeah, for no, like it's a studio, you know, and there's all this weird architecture. And I was getting out of the shower one day. This is way before the Sallie house. This was like right around my like birthday in April, and I thought I saw a person in my house. And I screamed bloody murder and just stood there for a little while. I was like, here it goes.
Yeah.
And then it was my coat. It was my, like 100%. Like I hung my coat up, like I have a clothing rack, and I just like had hung it up there because I was being lazy.
Right.
But I didn't do anything.
I've done that same thing an embarrassing amount of times.
I'm just scared of actual coats.
It is truly your kryptonite.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, researching all this paranormal stuff, you think I'd grab my camera if I thought it was like a shadow person, or that I'd rush towards it if it was a person because I listened to like true crime podcast. Nothing.
Yeah,
I was like, well, I'm going to die in like this ugly towel.
It'd be real loud.
So I just stood there and like looked at it, and then I was like, "Oh, it's a coat. Cool." And I kind of like sighed in relief and started like talking to myself. I was like, "You're good, Tess. Like whatever. No one needs to know about this, and now I'm telling you on a podcast." But anyway, yeah. So we finished out the EVP, and I just felt like sick, and I continued to feel sick in the house, and the house started to feel oppressive and like gross, like it
which
felt
you
like
weren't feeling
dirty.
before.
No, and I said this on my interview with Scott. Is the scariest thing about the house is it turned on. It turned on and it was off.
Yeah.
When you say it turned on, you mean these sensations started flooding in more very distinctly and intensely? Sort of
Yeah,
sudden?
and kind of like escalating, because it's like first I felt kind of like my chest tight, and then like I felt kind of nauseous, and then there was the hair pull, and then the or hair like lift. It wasn't really a pull, and then why, and then that lingering fear, and it just was a little intense. And then, oh well, this is funny. Scott said this on the episode. So we went and like, if you've listened to the podcast, you've heard it. He like closes the door and he comes downstairs, and we're all just downstairs, like, quietly, like waiting for the time to be up to go back to the room.
Yeah.
And he goes and gets it. And again, like, this is a weird time thing too. I don't know where I was when he played it. I don't know why I wasn't with them.
Huh.
I think I was on the couch in the living room. I don't know where I was, because
You just
Megan,
sort of don't have a memory of or a clear memory of that time?
No, I just remember maybe I was I want to say I was in the living room, but I might have been near the stairwell, because then I see Scott book it and saying, "I'm out of here." And I was like,
Yeah.
Like-
Sorry, go
and
ahead, Tess.
Scott's like a tall guy, like he's like
Yeah.
not
He's a
big,
big
he's not
dude.
fat. Scott, you're so
No, but
attractive.
he's a full grown man. He's a full sized man. Yeah.
And he
I mean,
just
well, we
took
should mention
off.
the EVP itself is. So you play it on the show,
Yeah.
and it is terrifying.
Yeah, very frightening.
And
The
there's
impression-
there's more stuff on that we haven't released yet. That's like kind of
Are you-
a lot.
Are you allowed to talk about that at all, or not really?
I can't.
Okay.
So we had a lot of like listeners write in that were like audiologists or sound professionals, and we had a couple guys clean it up. It's supposed to go on YouTube. I'll bug Scott about it.
Yeah.
But there are you can hear some distinct phrases. I think more distinct than what was played in the episode. Yeah.
Because I will say, it's just how I am. Like, I hear something like that, and I'm immediately trying to like rationalize it of like things it could be. I just go through a list of things that noise can possibly be. Either way, no matter what it is a horribly unpleasant noise.
Very unpleasant.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's gross. I mean, that's how I describe it. And so Scott runs out the front door, and I was like, Jesus Christ. And he's like, come to the backyard. I'll play it for you. And so we all go to the backyard.
Did
and we
he
listen to it
on his own in the room? I was a little confused about the timing of that.
Oh no, he was downstairs with us.
Got it. Okay.
So he was the last one out of the door, and he closed the door, and you can kind of hear that. You can hear him like saying like, "We're gonna leave you alone now, peace." And then we're all downstairs together, and then he goes back up to retrieve it. Then he comes down and plays it with Megan. I don't know where I or Forrest was. I'm pretty sure his parents were at the dining room table.
Yeah.
And then he runs outside, and then we kind of all follow him to the backyard. He plays it for us. I want to 100% throw up. And then Megan and I look at our arms, and we have scratches.
Yikes.
The scratches on your guys' arms just floored me in the episode.
And it was the same arm in the same place.
On both of you guys?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
It seemed as if from the episode that the recording had a sort of outsized effect on Scott compared to the rest of you guys. And obviously, we talked about this over Twitter a little bit. He describes his own experience with that, and also some weird stuff that kind of happened to him after the recording. So we don't really have to go too deep into that. But would you say that's accurate, that it seemed to have a larger effect on Scott particularly than the rest of you guys?
100%. I mean, everyone was freaked out. As a baseline, everyone was like, this isn't, I think the true upsetting part is your brain immediately tries to rationalize it, but it was a silent room. That there's no prankster in there. There's no way to get in. So your brain automatically says, no, it was that. But then it's like, no, it wasn't. And that. It wasn't that. Yeah.
What did you feel like when you looked down and you saw the scratch on your... I just imagine that's got to be terrifying to feel like you're almost under attack by something that you can't see and you don't know what it is.
I kind of felt that same ice coldness again looking at it, and then I felt very my arm felt disembodied from me looking at it. Like I was looking at a picture, like it wasn't happening. And then even on the episode, you can hear me being like, well, maybe I just scraped it on something.
Right. Yeah, you sort of do dismiss it a little bit in the episode.
And I still want to believe that, because the more I think about it, the more we talk about it, and the more, Scott said on the episode how much we have from the Pickmans and how much we have from all the investigations that have gone on 6, like gigs and gigs and gigs of data. Everything from written experiences to videos to EVP, photos, everything. Yeah. And the more I see of them, it gets harder to put away.
It is so interesting. On this show, we talk a lot about how one of the things that's sort of challenging or funny about doing a podcast on the occult and the paranormal in the age of, high technology, and everybody basically has a production studio in their pocket, is like, well, you think there'd be more documentation of this stuff. But in the case of the Sallie house, there kind of is. There's kind of a lot recorded on stuff that's happened there.
Oh, yeah. And I think one thing that's kind of changed is I didn't think... and I kind of mentioned it in what, the episode we're on now is poltergeist hauntings last 2 to 3 years and then they go away. But now I'm like, did they go away or did they just feed enough? Are they just there still? Because I have never really heard of a house that goes on and off. You walk into a haunted house and you're supposed to feel scared, point blank, right? That's the idea is. Yeah. You're supposed to enter this place and it's the feelings you get from it are immediately you're overcome. I didn't feel like that at all. I was so goofy to the point where I was putting the Raggedy Ann doll for the next people. I was like, oh, these suckers.
Yeah, right. Bold move.
Because I wasn't scared. I wasn't. I didn't feel. But leaving that house, it was getting being outside the house was and getting scratched. That's my least favorite part because we weren't in the fucking house
side of the domain.
Yeah. So that was super I just think that's even hard for me to kind of come to terms with now. And then Forrest went back up and recorded, and Maria and him, but I was outside, and I can't remember if this got cut or not, but there were 2 little boys playing out front, and they kept trying to get to the Sallie house. They kept trying to.
This was actually such a creepy detail.
And they were 2 really sweet little boys, but they wouldn't really talk. The older brother would talk a little bit, and he didn't seem as interested in the Sallie house. He seemed more scared, or at least wary, or I don't want to go over there. I'm playing on my big wheel. Yeah. But the little boy kept trying to open the door.
It was literally the way you describe it in the episode. It literally reads like something out of It or something. That's some
Stephen
force
King
kind
novel.
Of drawing this kid into the house.
Oh, I hate it.
I hate it, man.
And it was just a very strange experience to be because Forrest wanted to go because Forrest didn't really feel anything. The EVP obviously affected him in the sense that that's not supposed to be on there. That's weird. It makes me uncomfortable. But he did not feel...
I love how he seems fine, kind of.
Yeah.
His co-host just got cool. Spiritually nuked, and he's like, I think I felt an itch. Is anybody
But that's Forrest, man.
Yeah.
But maybe the house didn't need to prove anything to him.
Yeah, he's just such a believer. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, and then they came out and we left, and I remember driving away. Me and Megan flipped off the house in the like out of the back seat of the car, and it truly like once we were like in the car heading up the road, it kind of felt like I had taken a shower. Like
wow,
that's how I would kind of describe it. Like all that heaviness and like I just and I said like I just felt gross after that. Like I felt like unclean.
There's something in the recording. I actually messaged. What's so interesting is I listened to the episode and I messaged Scott just because the recording I found very intense and really moving in sort of a negative way, and it sounded like he had a really rough time with it. And I messaged him, not realizing that literally thousands of other people had the exact same reaction. And there was
I had to record all of them in a big Excel doc before I went on vacation. There's probably, I think I noted, there's like 400-ish more to put in the Excel doc that I haven't done yet. Yeah. That I have not done yet. And the stories that they tell, I mean, they read a few on episode 4, but the amount of people that felt things even before we released any analysis is just overwhelming. And people were emailing us and messaging us and on the Facebook group saying, I've never written into a podcast, or I thought EVPs were bullshit, or all these kind of qualifications or qualifiers to like, hey, I'm not a crazy person, but this was weird and I feel like this. And a couple people were like, I can't stop listening to this. Like, what should I do?
That's weird. I had the opposite reaction where it was like, cool, I'm just going to burn my computer now and throw it in the ocean.
That's what I to it. Like, I think I've listened to it like 21 times, 22 times.
I mean, like, I was kind of in the opposite of Eric's boat of I was compelled to like, I don't know, it's a desire to like unpack it.
You also have a good ear for audio and tech. I feel like it's probably for Brian, for you, a little bit interesting to hear it from that.
Just desperately trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Well, what do you guys think? I'm curious. What did you get from the EVP?
I did have, and I don't say this lightly, so I kind of, it has an identity. I don't know. I did have a physical feeling in my chest when I listened to it. I don't know if that was a little bit of just being spooked by it. I don't know, man, but I was sitting at my desk right next to Eric, and I did have a visible like, ugh.
Yeah, I wrote this to Scott, but my reaction, so do you remember that movie, The Perfect Storm?
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever, it's about this literal true story, perfect storm of basically just a mega storm. I was alive for that, and I was about maybe 5 or 6 years old when that happened, and I was out on the east end of Long Island at my grandpa's house, and the storm hit where we were, and he had these big, thick storm windows that are, multiple inches thick, and they were literally bending in as this thing was just swirling around the house, just total dark. And it kind of, that memory, when I was listening to the recording, kind of flashed back. It felt like this very intense, elemental force, and just this sense of something kind of trying to like get in, if that makes sense. Or get out, yes. And just like rage, just like blind, dumb, animalistic rage is the vibe. It's just the feeling I got. Yeah, in a sense of sort of sickness and.
I mean, the sound on the EVP is an angry ass sound.
Yes,
yeah.
It's an angry boy.
Yeah.
But we had people writing in saying they felt that it wasn't anger, it was pain or frustration about pain. So it really crossed all parts of the spectrum. And then we also had people saying they didn't feel anything and that it was BS. And why did we spend 16 hours talking about this?
Right.
It all comes in different, but Scott said it, and I'll adopt saying it too, is I know what happened to me and I don't care if you believe or not. And that me not caring isn't a negative towards you, but I'm not going to kowtow or change what I said because this is what happened to me. And that's all I can really say.
Sure.
Also, it's compelling as hell. Why wouldn't you spend that much time on it? Come on.
It's crazy.
I think it is. Yeah. And I think the history of the town and the house itself were super great. I loved, hearing we heard everyone from like a medium to like ham radio guys. And I think it was just such a cool and different episode for us to do. I'm extremely glad it's over because coming back in July, I kind of like got used to like being alone again, and then like having to work through all those episodes. I was glad I was on vacation actually when the last 2 came out, and I was very happy to be not at my house.
How have you been since then? I know Scott kind of talks about some things happening after visiting the house back where he lives. Have you experienced anything odd in that regard?
Aside from sentient coats, of course.
So yeah, telling the story, even, I mean, like, I promise it's not stage fright. Even telling the story to other people, my mom and dad don't want to hear it. My mom said if that scared you that bad, I can't listen to it. Like, I can't.
Wow.
Yeah. And she was like, I can't like know that something like maybe tried to hurt you. And my parents like aren't really believers. Like, they like a good story, but the more, they're not really interested in this kind of stuff, but they're so supportive. But my parents were like straight up like, no, we're not listening to that if that freaked you out. And so they were like, well, would you tell us what happened? And I've told a couple of friends and a couple of people who've like listened to the podcast and asked about it. I've even typed it and kind of gotten like a little flipped out. And then anytime, so when Scott and I recorded, and now when you and I recorded, something has fallen over in my house in the same exact spot.
No.
Oh, so that happened.
It wasn't
before.
the lights. It wasn't the lights, but it was a pile of laundry, which like
Gotcha.
It was probably there for 2 days because I'm really good at folding laundry, but don't like putting it. Yeah. And it hadn't like moved. Like there was no reason. I'm on my bed right now in my hallway, but there a couple weird things have like happened in my hallway, and like my hallway. And I mentioned this. It's like about 25 feet long into my studio. So it's like long and skinny, and at night it's dark. And I'd be like laying in bed, maybe like checking the Facebook group or like answering an email or like just getting ready to go to bed. And I go to like shut off my light, and I get this like, it wasn't a voice or anything, but it was my own thought saying like, it's here. And then I get like flipped out. Like I get flipped out. I get like freaked out for no reason. Like it's not like, it was during the time we were like working on the episodes and releasing them, but it wasn't like I was talking about it in my daily life or anywhere but online. And I wasn't actively thinking about it. I was trying not to. And so and that happened to when I got home, it was like my hallway just like flipped me out. And that's why I hung Christmas lights after a really, because I ended up being up until so we released, right? I'm trying to think of the date we released. The week of Halloween, I strung up lights because the 2 days before we dropped the episode, I couldn't sleep. Like I could not look at my hallway. Like it was to the point, like, when you're a little kid and you're afraid of the dark and you're like, I need to run to turn the light on, but something could get me in between the light and me.
We talk about like running up the basement stairs as a little kid, like not wanting to be slow in that space.
Yeah. And in my head, that's happened to me before. I work for a paranormal podcast. Like, I look at scary things for part of my living, and I get scared like that all the time, but I never get scared enough to not be able to calm myself down.
To go to Home Depot and buy lighting.
I've never gotten so scared where I have felt like that little kid who can't turn the light on and that you're just sitting there in the dark. Wow. And of course, like, that's easy to just, like, shrug off. I mean, it's a dark hallway. Of course it's fucking scary. Like, it's just uncomfortable. And, I don't wear my glasses to bed. So it's easy to see things, but yeah, like when I went to turn off to like flip on the light that one time when I got that like feeling, and again, it wasn't like words. It was my own thoughts. Like it was me thinking like it's here.
Right.
And yeah, it actually happened. It's probably going to happen tonight. I wonder if it will, because I talked about it, because it happened after Scott interviewed me. And yeah, and then when Scott was interviewing me, my laundry fell over. So nothing like the car incident or like nothing weird, but just kind of this sense of fear. And part of me wonders, like, if you believe any of this at all, like, is the house trying to be like, hey, like, don't forget what happened?
What a truly terrifying note to leave out on.
Yeah, well,
I know. I kept you guys for over
scared.
an hour.
Yeah. I feel like we could do another too. This is wild, Tess. Thank you so much for coming on and kind of recounting some of this stuff. I know it's actually not necessarily easy to talk about it again after everything that happened. So we really appreciate you.
I'm sorry if it went a little long.
Not at all.
No, not at all. Thank you for reliving a pretty scary experience to two idiots. I cannot stress we are goddamn idiots.
I only understood 50% of the words you said. I am 200% scared, though. I'll tell you that.
Nice
Brian and I sleep in bunk beds.
I can say, go listen to this. Go listen to your guys' podcast. I'm not telling anyone else ever again.
Oh, no.
Tess, if people are interested, where can they find you around the internet?
Yeah.
I am at Tess Pfeifle on Twitter, and I am all over the Astonishing Legends Facebook group.
Hell yeah.
Great. Awesome. Well, Tess, thank you so much again for coming on, and we will be in touch.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Have a good night.
All right. You too.
Get home safe, not scared.
All right, and that was our interview with Tess Pfeifle. Tess, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really owe you one.
Yeah, that was a doozy. Thank you so much.
Let's see. We got a couple things to go over real fast. Eric, we have a Twitter.
We sure do.
We have at Brian and Eric Pod. You can hit us up there.
Anytime.
We'll answer questions.
That's probably the best place to reach us.
That is definitely the best place to reach us. Another great thing that you should do, find us on the internet.
Oh, yeah.
Is hit up our iTunes.
Yep.
Leave us a nice little review and a rating. A thing we're trying that has not caught on yet.
Not yet.
Leave a ghost story and a review, and we'll read it on the show.
We'll read it right here.
You gotta have a ghost story. You gotta.
Yeah.
And if you don't, make one up. We won't know. No, don't do that.
Yeah.
Our music is from Purple Dash Planet. That's our background music. And our intro and outro are by Morris Black, who you can find on Spotify. Go check out his website and buy his stuff. I guess apart from that, Tess, thank you again. And Andrew WK, we're coming for you, buddy.
We're coming for you. I hope you guys all had happy holidays, and hang in there. Stay spooky.
Later, everybody.
Bye, guys.